coming along?
It's going good. It's nice to meet you. I feel like I'm meeting an LSAT celebrity.
Yeah, I suppose if there are LSAT celebrities,
I know
I do put out a
you
lot.
would be one of them. But yeah, it's going good. I just started reviewing all of your content on Saturday night, I think. Did a lot yesterday too. Got through all the foundational stuff. And I'm probably, I think, 2 or 3 videos into just the logic games in the workshop section. So yeah, it's going good so far.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear it. Any particular challenges you're facing in terms of getting started?
No, not really. I mean, I was kind of in the grind with studying, the first time around. So getting back into the swing of things was easier than I thought. I did take a little break after my first round. I felt a little bit of defeat as expected. But yeah, and then I started working a part-time job. So just readjusting with my schedule and everything. But yeah, it's good to be back on the grind, starting from square one, I guess.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you're getting into it. And I would definitely encourage you to attend the live classes as well. We have tons of live classes happening every week.
Yeah, I'm super eager and excited. I would say my biggest thing right now out of the 3 different types of sections is just the logic games. I'm feeling super solid on just basic sequencing, basic ordering, grouping even. I can zoom through that, but it's just a lot of the combination games, just little things here and there throw me a curveball, and then I'll end up diagramming and get to the second or third question and be like, oh my gosh, I missed a huge inference at the beginning. And then I'll kind of freak myself out and be like, do I go back? Do I re-diagram? So I think that's probably my biggest weakness now would be, the more complicated logic games. But your videos have been super helpful so far, just with everything else. So I'm not as worried now that I've started reviewing your content and everything like that.
Sweet. I'm really glad to hear it. And I would say kudos to you on all your progress in logic games so far. It's a good problem to have that it's only the tough ones giving you trouble.
Exactly.
So we've got a class tomorrow night on some of the curveball games. And then I also have lists of curveball games specifically you could practice. So of course you may want to do some time logic game sections just to work on pacing and stay fresh on the easier types, but you may also want to drill a lot of the tough games as well.
I mean, just drill is the best way for me, at least with logic games. Logical reasoning seems to be just easier for me. I think that's because that's where I started studying, was just logical reasoning, and really zoned in on that. Kind of saved reading comp for after, introducing the logic games. Come to find, reading comp was not what I thought it was going to be. It's not just reading. You got to read in a very specific way and everything like that. So, but yeah, I would say logic games right now is my biggest scary guy.
Well, you're saying that, but at the same time, you also told me that it's really only the tougher combination curveball kinds of games that are giving you trouble. So while I understand the quest for perfection on logic games, and I definitely would encourage you to keep forging ahead on that quest, at the same time, it might be that reading comprehension is an area that you also want to devote a lot of time, especially since it is a third of the exam. It actually has the most questions on a section, and it's also a little bit tougher to improve upon. So you may want to spend more time there. Come along with me for those deep dive sessions where we analyze one passage in depth, breaking it down sentence by sentence, line by line, word by word.
Yeah, exactly.
It's grueling, but it's important.
And it's grueling, but super important. But yeah, another thing I wanted to talk to you about was just the LSAT-Flex in general. I found, because I've already taken the exam, I sat for it in November, and I don't know if it was just because I was in the same space as I was studying. I sat in the same exact space, same exact conditions and everything for the actual exam. But once it started and I'm sitting in front of the actual thing, I was kind of thrown, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the real thing. I'm not studying anymore. This is the real thing. And it was really hard for me to get out of the mindset of a study zone, just because I'm so used to going into class, being in a different environment, sitting with everybody else who's taking the same exam. It was very difficult for me to kind of get in the zone when I was just in the same place that I was studying, so that probably was the biggest shock on actual test day. But I mean, I got to master the flags. That's what COVID has brought us to. So
Sure, sure. I hear that's a real struggle. I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, some people do better in testing environments with other people around. Some people do
Mhm.
better alone in their own home, but it is what it is. It's going to be
Yeah.
online for quite a while. Actually, they just announced last week. So that means that you'll basically be doing it in that environment where you've been doing a lot of your studying.
Yeah.
I don't know how realistic it is, but what if it was possible for you to make your study zone as serious as if it were test day all the
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. I was just going through just yesterday, just different scenarios and just different things that I could kind of tweak in order to not experience that problem again on test day. But yeah, I definitely think I could readjust the environment to be more, like nothing on my desk while I'm studying, kind of just synchronizing how it would be on actual test day. So yeah, that's something I could definitely tweak a little bit. Um, I also wanted to ask, as far as reading comp, I didn't struggle too much with it when I first started studying, but so I took one of the generic like varsity tutor, huge, big corporate classes. And they were just throwing out different techniques and different strategies as far as which questions to attack first, which questions to save for, towards the end of the passage. And it wasn't until maybe a month before I sat for the exam that I kind of derailed from them saying you should go in order of how it's listed from the passage. And then that's when I found your videos and you were saying go global and then zone in on the more particular ones where it's asking for specific inferences and everything like that from the passage. So I think that's another thing that is going to just be a real big adjustment for me going into studying for the second round. Is just kind of rewiring when I'm looking at the passage and preparing myself to say, okay, we're going to hit the global ones first, and then we're going to do the other ones at the end. So that's something I'm excited too when I do reach all the reading comp stuff.
Yeah, there's some new strategies to try out, and that's something you can refine. And so making test day real means not just doing the questions in the order they're listed in a book or in LAHA, but rather approaching them every single time you study the way you would on test day. So if you find that my strategy of global, local, inferential works for you, fantastic. Keep that up every single time you do a timed exam, an individual timed section, or even just a single standalone passage. Every time you sit down to do a full length exam, you clear out your desk, go through the entire ritual.
Yeah.
Anybody else who might live with you, get them out of the way, make sure your internet is strong, all of that, so that when you do the actual thing itself, it'll be like just another run through. So if you make your practice more serious, you'll make what is serious feel less impactful. You'll make it feel more like practice.
Yeah, exactly. And then thank you for that. And then I did want to ask too, just as far as, because I am sitting for the April exam, which I know it's very late in the cycle. But as far as tackling, I guess my first question would be as far as tackling a specific way, order of, this day I hit logic games, this day I do logical reasoning. What do you think with my time frame is the best way to kind of space everything out so I'm not losing my logic game skills, so I'm not forgetting all my logical reasoning stuff that I've built up in my head, and especially not losing my skills for reading comp and being able to, to drive through a passage in the most efficient way possible. So I'm just looking for recommendations because I'm kind of just, as of now, zoning in on logic games, and I'll do it for like a week. And then I'll be like, oh my gosh, I forgot about logical reasoning. And then I'll go and I'll switch gears. But I just don't want to lose any of the skills that I've built up thus far. So just looking for recommendations, I guess.
Sure. What would help you feel in your prep like you weren't at risk of getting rusty in any section or any question type?
I would say that I found in a particular week. So basically I'm working my part-time job and then I'll come home and I'll study. But I found that I was most comfortable within the week if I hit everything in 1 week. And like I said, I tried to do the logic games for a week and then switching gears and then do logical reasoning. But just doing all of them and kind of just rotating through them also helped me not burn out, because I was starting to experience a little bit of a burnout when I was just doing games for a week or two and then logical reasoning for a week or two. So just kind of doing everything together in a mix in a week was most beneficial for me.
Fantastic. So there you go. So make sure that within each week, you rotate between the 3 different sections. You can also get more granular about it where you have games Monday, logical reasoning Tuesday, reading comp Wednesday, then back to logic games Thursday. Or you could make Thursday a day where you do a full-length timed exam. Or you can even rotate within a single day if you wanted to. It's up to you. There are pros and cons to any approach, but it's about what helps you feel most comfortable and reduce the stress associated with maybe forgetting something and also not get burned out doing too much of one thing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. And then, I wanted to touch on just the timeline because like I said, I know I'm late in the cycle. Wasn't really my plan to be sitting for the April one. I was going to sit for the February one, but again, I was just super defeated. So, I mean, I guess from your perspective, pros, cons of applying this late in the game. My game plan is to have all my apps in within the next few weeks. So that's taken care of. So I don't really have to worry about that. All my letters of rec and everything, they're all squared away. So yeah, I guess from your perspective, pros, cons of applying this late in the cycle. Obviously I did the whole Google search thing and read all of, you're not going to get in if you're applying this late in the game. But then I'm reading stories of, it doesn't really matter. So from the pro, what do you think?
Well, let me ask you this. Why are you applying now? And why are you applying in April?
Because I would love to start in the fall of 2021. That was my game plan from the get-go. And I would say when I put my mind to something, I'm really determined to do so. And I feel like even though I'm late in the game, like why not just keep going for it and try and push and apply and just see with the rolling basis for a lot of the schools that I'm applying to, if something works out for me.
Well, which schools are you applying to?
A handful in New York. So Brooklyn Law, Cardozo Law, which is a smaller one, but they founded the Innocence Project, which I'm really, really interested in. And then New York Law, and then NYU is my reach. So yeah, those are just a few of them.
Okay. And how's your GPA?
3.8.
Okay. So it's a good GPA.
Yeah.
And how important is scholarship money to you?
It's pretty important. I was lucky enough to walk out of my undergrad with little to no student debt. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world if I'm not getting scholarship money or anything like that. But I totally get that applying at the beginning of the cycle is crucial as far as scholarship money goes and everything like that. So I'm kind of aware of that downfall a little bit, but still going strong. Still want to do it.
I hear you. And why not apply in the fall and wait a year to go to law school?
I mean, it's totally an option. I don't know, I guess I'm super eager because I've been studying for months and just, want to get going and get the ball rolling. But I mean, that's a good point. There really is no rush, especially with COVID and everything right now, to wait until fall 2022. But I mean, what do you think would be best?
What I think is that if you're not in a hurry to go to law school now for some incredibly pressing reason, you're probably better off waiting. Mm-hmm. You can get tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship money by applying at the beginning of the cycle rather than this late in the cycle. If your numbers are significantly higher than the medians for schools like Brooklyn, Cardozo, and such, then you might still get some scholarship money anyway. I would never say never, but you also mentioned NYU in the same breath, and NYU is a totally different criteria for getting in.
Exactly.
So if you really want to go to NYU, I would say no question, delay. But some of the schools that are lower ranked with lower medians, you might still have a shot. But there's no question that you'll get better scholarship offers if you apply at the beginning of the next cycle. And I mean, COVID definitely means opportunity costs are low relative to going now. But there's also the question, do you want to go to law school online or do you want to go in person? Fingers crossed COVID goes away and we can go back to normal.
Exactly. I mean, in an ideal, perfect situation without COVID in the picture, I would love to go in person, get full experience and do it that way just because I'm such an in-person learner. Like I said, with sitting for the exam and stuff, it's best for me. But I mean, I would be open to doing it online as well. It's what everybody has to deal with now. So totally understand that whole aspect of it. But as far as So if I were to apply this late in the game, not considering scholarship money or anything like that, do you think because it's so late in the cycle that my chances are just completely diminished or not necessarily affected with the schools with the rolling basis admission process? Or like, what's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for higher ranked schools, for better ranked schools like NYU, there's no question your odds are significantly diminished.
Yeah.
Any school's deadlines are going to be soft, especially during a year like COVID. But this has also been an incredibly competitive cycle because of COVID. So even though they will accept an application, odds are lower. At the same time, though, lower ranked schools, you never know if you're significantly above the medians, meaning like you're above the 75th for both LSAT and GPA, then you could almost certainly have a shot at a school like Brooklyn or Cardozo, but you probably won't get the same scholarship money as if you were to wait. And being willing to wait a year, again, tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships, it could well be worth it. You could basically, whatever you might make from working for that year, you might get in scholarships for free just by willing to wait. Exactly. And you could also work at the same time during that year and make double.
Yeah, exactly. It's a game changer. So I think that's, been my biggest question thus far with studying a second round is, looking at the calendar and realizing, oh man, we are late in the cycle.
One additional consideration I want to mention, Shay, is that if you, let's say you take it in April or you shoot for April and you decide that you might do better on the LSAT given another 2 months or so, you could retake in June. And then June, of course, is even later in this cycle, but you would not be any later applying for next cycle. So if you're willing to apply next cycle, you then have options to retake in June potentially, or even retake in August and apply at the very beginning of the cycle either way. And getting a few points more by waiting a little bit longer could also make a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing I wanted to ask was basically when I did sit for the exam the first time, and like I had told you before, I did not get the score that I wanted. And I was actually scoring on an average 10 to 12 points higher on my practice test than I did on the actual exam, which, when it came down to it, wasn't a surprise to me on that actual day because I did have, a freak out. Oh my gosh, it's happening. This is the real thing. But I guess any tips going forward as to, even when I did sit for practice tests by myself a handful of times, lots of times, I would get a little bit nervous at the beginning and it would definitely throw off the first 5 minutes of the first section that I did. And I wouldn't be reading with an objective standpoint. I was, reading questions and would find that the first 3 answers that I did when I went back at the end of the section, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many opinionative things I chose that answer based off of opinion. But yeah, any tips or tricks as far as when I initially start a practice test or initially sit for the exam as to just staying calm, cool, and collected?
Sure. Yeah. I have a ton of resources on test day prep specifically in the course. Things like reducing test day nerves and anxiety and simulating the conditions. We talked a little bit earlier about that ritual of sitting down for your practice tests like it's game day itself, meaning that you've already researched all the things on ProctorU in terms of what's allowed, what's required, what's prohibited, what to do, what not to do, all of that stuff. And then having a system in place where even if you have a momentary blank out or a fight or flight response sort of thing, or you need a warm up, you've got that taken care of so that you follow these specific steps no matter what. And I'm not saying these, like there is one set of steps to follow. We've got to customize a set of steps for you based on your unique workflow as you go through a logic game or a reading comp passage or whatever it is. And so that's the sort of thing we could discuss in like the group coaching mastermind context in the course, in the group setting. And then alternatively, there's also all the test day prep videos specifically that'll go into far more depth.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's super helpful. And then just the last question off the top of my head, when it comes to reading comp, I did find when I first started studying and, now that I'm a handful of months into this process, a lot of the passages I found, to put in the most simplest terms, very boring. And I found, zoning out. And I did see at the very beginning of the course in one of the foundational videos that was posted about reading comp that you had recommended, reading specific articles and stuff like that to kind of get your brain in the comfortable zone of, you know, reading those lengthy, wordy articles and stuff like that. So I didn't take a picture of it when I watched the video. So just off the top of your head, do you have any recommendations of articles I could be reading to just better familiarize myself with, you know, boring passages and long big boy passages like that?
Sure. What topics don't you like for passages?
Oh, humanities. That's my worst. That is definitely my worst.
Okay. Can you be more specific? Are there any passages in particular that you didn't like, or any topics within humanities you don't like, or is it just all of it?
It's unfortunate to say, but just any humanities passage that I get, it's just immediately I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. This is the humanities one. And I want to say just anything historically, just that's super specific that I'm not familiar with. And I do recall you saying in one of your old videos, it's better if you are familiar with the topic, but it could also hurt you in the end while you're going through questions and stuff like that. So I just found that a lot of the humanities passages that were discussing things that I just had no idea about threw me for a curveball, and it would just kind of overwhelm me. And I would just, you know, be second guessing myself while I was going through answer choices, which I usually don't do with the science passages or the law passages. I can easily just go through and confidently answer them. But I did find with the humanities passage, it was more of a struggle for me. And I was second guessing myself going through, not really as confident as I should be with those guys.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I would recommend Arts and Letters Daily,
Okay.
aldaily.com.
Okay.
They link to a bunch of different articles on the kinds of topics that show up in humanities passages. And so just reading those and getting more comfortable with them and getting more familiar with the kinds of topics they cover, it'll definitely translate over to LSAT reading comp passages. And then, of course, there are nearly 400 released passages. And so there's truly nothing better than just looking at the old passages themselves. You could pull from the first 10 or 20 exams that you might not otherwise ever touch and just read them over your morning coffee. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then as I'm going through all this content and all the workshop videos and everything like that, I do have the test prep book. I think it begins with 72. Would you recommend getting the earlier ones as well, in addition to that?
Yeah, 10 exams is not going to be enough, but rather than getting more books, I would suggest getting LSAC's Law Hub so that you get the exams in that online LSAT format.
Okay, awesome. Will do. I was kind of looking into Law Hub last night and figured this is probably exactly what he wants me to get. So
yeah, definitely get it.
That's super helpful. All right, awesome. Cool. Sorry, I just threw a bunch of questions at you.
Not at all. This is what I do all day. I love it. So
yes, you're like, I'm used to it. Don't worry. All right, awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. It's been super helpful. I'm super eager to jump into all the material and especially the live classes too. That's probably
fantastic.
The big thing that I'm just most stoked about going into everything and the supreme package, I guess.
It's one of my favorite things as well. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you in class later.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.